As of November 2007, supporters of Bolton Football Club witnessed one of the most memorable moments in the club's history. Bolton played against the European powerhouse Bayern Munich at the Allianz Arena in front of over 60,000 fans and went back home to England with a 2-2 draw in the bag. It was no small feat by any means, because that Bayern squad contained superstars such as Frank Ribery, Miroslav Klose, Lukas Podolski, Bastian Schweinsteiger, Oliver Kahn, and many other big names. However, it would also spell the beginning of the end for Bolton, as things only went downhill from there. Within 5 years, they were playing in the Championship, the second tier of English football, and by the end of the 2021 season, they'd slid all the way down to League Two, the fourth tier. Clearly, something went wrong with the form of the squad, but other factors behind the scenes contributed to that form. Financial problems sit at the top of that list of contributing factors, and a closer look at the details should reveal more information about how it all went bad for the four-time FA Cup winners. The Allardyce era. To provide proper context to the journey of Bolton FC from riches to rags, we have to go back to the 01-02 season. Then club manager Sam Allardyce had just led the team into the Premier League following a 2-1 victory over Preston North End in the Championship playoff final. Bolton have never been a club with great financial backing, so Allardyce had to weave quite a bit of magic in the transfer window to achieve some success with the squad that he had. At the time, the club was under the overall guidance of chairman Phil Gartside, and he barely invested any money into the club for transfers. In the year of their promotion, Bolton only spent €3.5 million in the transfer market, despite making up to €15 million from the sales of players. Eidur Gudjohnsen in particular pulled in €7.5 million for the club with his sale to Chelsea Football Club. This transfer model restricted the type of business that Allardyce could do in the market, and he had to cast his net very wide to attract players from all over Europe for bargain prices. Over the course of his time with the club, he was able to convince a few relatively big names in their prime to join Bolton. Key transfers. The first of such transfers was the arrival of World Cup winner Yuri Djorkaeff from Kaiserslautern for a fee of €500,000. He was already 33 years old at the time, but the deal still represented a significant coup for a club of Bolton's stature. In the 02-03 season, 28-year-old JJ Okocha joined Bolton from Paris Saint-Germain on a free transfer. He came with a reputation for being one of the most entertaining tricksters in the game, and he added much-needed experience and flair to Bolton's midfield and attack. In the same year, the club signed Ivan Campo from Real Madrid on a loan deal. He was also 28 years old at the time, and he'd won the Champions League twice with Madrid. A year later, he joined the club permanently for free. Another key free transfer was Kevin Davies, bought in from Southampton at the age of 26 in the 03-04 season. He went on to serve the club for 9 years, scoring 73 league goals in that time. In the 04-05 season, more key names came through the door. El Hadj Diouf joined on loan from Liverpool, eventually making the deal permanent for €4.8 million the next season. Tal Ben Haim also joined from Maccabi Tel Aviv for €225,000, and a 34-year-old Gary Speed joined from Newcastle for around €1 million. In Allardyce's final year with the club, he signed Nicolas Anelka from Fenerbahce for €12 million, and it was the biggest transfer of his time with Bolton, at least in terms of value. Before then, the club had been spending very little in the transfer market, although they were also barely making any money from player sales. In fact, they made more from the season that Gudjohnsen was sold than the rest of Allardyce's years with the club combined. Achievements and new ownership. The first couple of seasons back in the Premier League were difficult for Bolton. They were consistently in and around the relegation places and finished 16th and 17th consecutively in the league. They did make it to the quarter-finals of the EFL Cup in the first season, but crashed out in disgrace with a 6-0 loss to Tottenham. By the 03-04 season, things started to look up. The new signings were fitting in nicely, and the form of the team experienced a boost as a result. They finished 8th in the league, notably beating Chelsea 2-1 at Stamford Bridge. They also went all the way to the EFL Cup final, knocking Liverpool out in the process. However, a 2-1 defeat to Middlesbrough ensured that they would not go home with the trophy. The club also came under new ownership that year, and the new club owner, Eddie Davis, was a lifelong supporter of Bolton. It seemed like a match made in heaven, but those thoughts perhaps came a bit too soon. The next season, Bolton continued to improve in the league, finishing 6th to earn qualification for the UEFA Cup ahead of the 05-06 season for the first time in the club's history. Their participation in the competition that year affected their league form, and they could only manage to finish 8th. They lost out in the UEFA Cup round of 32 that year, but they were back in the competition 2 years later after another 6th place finish in the 06-07 league season. Allardyce left the club in April 2007, and his assistant manager Sammy Lee took over as caretaker manager. However, Sammy was sacked in October of the same year after a string of poor performances and was replaced by Gary Megson. Initially, Big Sam claimed that he was leaving the club to take a sabbatical, but he later revealed that the real reason behind his departure was a lack of ambition from the club's hierarchy. They were not interested in providing the funds required to take the club to the next level, and he became disillusioned. Under Gary Megson, Bolton made it to the round of 16 of the UEFA Cup, falling to Sporting after defeating Atletico Madrid in the round of 32. It was the peak of prime Bolton Wanderers as a force in Europe, but it would not last. Post-Allardyce era. Despite showing a willingness to invest some money in the purchase of new players, under Gary Megson's tenure, Bolton failed to replicate the form that they had shown with Big Sam. The club notably broke its transfer fee record with a player plus cash deal for Swede forward Johan Elmander from Toulouse. He was signed for €12.6 million, and Daniel Bratton also went the other way for free. Elmander was at the club for 3 years, but could only manage 18 goals in 92 league appearances. That signing, and many others, contributed very little to the progress of Bolton under Gary Megson, and he was eventually sacked in 2009 following a 13th placed finish in the league. However, his replacement, Owen Coyle, did not do much better. In 3 years with Bolton, Coyle finished 14th twice and got the club relegated to the Championship in his 3rd year. By that time, the lack of returns on the investments that the club had been making was starting to show, and talks of bad financial decisions made by Eddie Davis filled the air. A financial mess. In 2015, news came to light that Davis had bankrolled the Good Times with a loan of £180 million, and the lack of returns from that investment made him eager to sell the club. Deep in debt and bottom of the Championship table, Bolton was facing a petition from the tax authority of the UK government, the HMRC, for £600,000 in unpaid taxes. They ended up relegated, but came right back up to the Championship after finishing as League One runners-up in the 16-17 season. They got some more respite in that season as former Bolton forward Dean Holdsworth took over from Eddie Davis as the new club owner in March 2016. Soon after, the instability at the club increased further as club chairman Ken Anderson bought out Holdsworth to take 95% control of Bolton. Ken was an unpopular figure among the fans, so this news did not go down well. His arrival proved to be another key moment in the decline of the club. At that point, Bolton was regularly losing its best players, and the team could not sustain any significant run of good form to keep their heads up. They got relegated to League One again at the end of the 18-19 season, as things continued to go from bad to worse, and worse to unimaginable. That year, Bolton lost a huge chunk of its first team, with players leaving the books as a result of unpaid wages. The club had to play league matches with youth players, and those players expectedly received thrashings from their more experienced opponents. To make matters worse, the club was hit with an unpaid tax bill of £1.2 million from the HMRC, and they received a 12-point penalty for their first season back in League One as a result of that fact. Eventually, a takeover by Football Ventures saved Bolton from going into administration at the last minute on August 28, 2019. It ensured that despite the terrible situation that the club was in, they would not have to go into extinction. Final words. Despite the takeover in 2019, Bolton has continued to endure a difficult time on the pitch in the lower echelons of the English Football League. It is a ridiculously long way back to the heights of that evening in Munich, and it must be tough times to be a supporter of the Trotters.